As of April 2022, when Sri Lanka officially announced its default, it had $4 billion in upcoming foreign debt payments, including a $1 billion international sovereign bond that was due to mature in July. In total, Sri Lanka owes $51 billion in debt and has become the first country to default since the Ukraine war began, with other vulnerable countries likely to follow suit. With so many countries, including Pakistan, which is currently in the sovereign debt danger zone, Sri Lanka's default is worth revisiting. In particular, what does it mean for Sri Lanka to have defaulted on its external debt? What are its implications? What caused the default, and what could have been done to prevent it? A default occurs when a government stops making interest payments to its creditors. Because money coming in from taxes and sources such as tourism and exports are severely reduced, many people who live in bankrupt countries find themselves out of work and unable to provide food and shelter for themselves and their families. Sri Lanka defaulted because of dangerously low foreign exchange reserves. It decided to retain what little remained for essential imports such as food and fuel. However, due to its low reserves, it is still experiencing severe shortages even of these items. There are long lines outside fuel stations where some people are even staying overnight so they can access fuel. The shortage of fuel for items like tractors and combined harvesters has also negatively affected farming in the country. Sri Lanka's currency has taken a major hit, and there is no power for several hours each day. Schools have closed, exams have been cancelled due to the unavailability of paper, and hospitals have run out of medicines. Intercity travel has come to a halt as buses are not running because there is no fuel to run them. Inflation is rampant, and prices have gone up just as people's incomes have taken a hit. Mass protests took place with people pushing not only for the president's resignation but also for the government's abdication, which they believe was corrupt and failed to take the basic necessary steps to avert the impending economic disaster despite clear signs that it was around the corner. Along with the daily lives of its citizens, a default also affects a country's credit score. Low credit scores reduce the chances of receiving loans in the future and result in higher interest rates on new and existing loans. Sri Lanka is currently in talks with the IMF to restructure its debt, making it the 17th time that the country has needed a financial rescue package from a global lender. Sri Lanka's economy, which has been faltering since 2020, is facing its worst economic crisis in over 70 years with inflation rising to record levels, food prices skyrocketing and government coffers running dry. While the government blamed the pandemic for the debilitating economic situation, many experts have said it was caused by political mismanagement and racking up debts with China. The Sri Lankan government has a long history of borrowing and overspending. In the past, it borrowed heavily to finance the construction of schools, hospitals, and other infrastructure projects. It has also spent a lot of these funds, some at the recommendation of donors, on unnecessary projects. For instance, the Lotus Tower in Colombo is the tallest building in South Asia and costs an estimated $113 million to build, but it remains empty and not in use. Matala Rajapaksa International Airport and Hambantota Port are similar examples of failures due to their extremely low traffic. For instance, Hambantota Port, which was built in 2010, cost $1.5 billion to build but had incurred losses of $46.7 billion SLR by 2016. Corruption and nepotism are rampant in Sri Lanka, which has consistently received a high corruption score by Transparency International and has hurt investor confidence. Part of the loans that the Sri Lankan government has been taking have been paying for its own expenses instead of investing in the economy. Sri Lanka also relies heavily on imports. However, due to recent fluctuations in commodity prices, which have been negatively affected by global supply chains, Sri Lanka's exports have been hit hard. This means that there isn't enough money coming into Sri Lanka through foreign trade to balance what the country owes to foreign creditors. Economic mismanagement on other fronts and external factors have also contributed. Sri Lanka was printing excessive amounts of money, while the war in Ukraine and rising commodity prices increased Sri Lanka's import bill, and COVID-19 disrupted tourism. However, despite signs of impending doom, the government was slow to take essential steps, such as prioritizing essential goods as opposed to luxury and other unnecessary items that should have been taken long ago. How Sri Lanka recovers, if at all, from its current crisis, only time will tell. However, with several other countries currently in a position similar to what Sri Lanka was in prior to its default, what is perhaps most alarming is that few are taking the lessons from Sri Lanka's economic disaster and using them to avert impending crises of their own.